Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Ok Xoomer. I'm your host, Aaron Lichtig, Xometry guy and former Jeopardy champion, and I'm here today with Vanessa Carpenter of Kintsugi Design, and she is our first guest from Denmark. She is based in Copenhagen, Denmark. So welcome, Vanessa.
Thank you so much for having me.
So first of all, what is Kintsugi Design?
So Kintsugi Design, my company, is a company where we're a consultancy, and we are looking at pretty much prototyping because my background is in hardware. I'm an interaction designer. So we do hardware prototyping. We look at meaningfulness in smart products. That's what I wrote my PhD in. So how can we create technology that helps people to lead a meaningful life? And we also help people with strategic futures. So we help a little bit with foresight and futures, but very much with a prototyping perspective.
So what is the meaning of Kintsugi?
Yeah, so Kinsugi, I actually chose the name because we worked with a Kintsugi artist in Japan. And Kintsugi is the traditional Japanese craft of repairing broken ceramics with gold or silver, with a precious metal in any case. So if you can imagine a bowl that's broken, then the Kintsugi artist will lovingly and carefully repair it. And in that way, the object that's repaired is worth far more than the original object. It's precious, right? So that's Kintsugi in a nutshell. And I did a project called Electronic Kintsugi. I have it right here, actually.
Oh, cool.
Which was a bowl. And when you stroke, now this is just copper tape so that I could prototype and experiment. But if you imagine that I'm stroking the gold, then I was just curious about what would happen if we stroke the wounds of this object and it made a soundscape. So we hooked it up to a speaker and an Arduino, of course, and just played with that a little bit.
Awesome. So when you touch it, it makes when you touch the imperfection, it makes a certain sound.
Yeah, so we designed it so that it was an explorative soundscape. It was never repeating. It's not like an instrument where you can play it. It's something that is, unpredictable. And this was part of my work in designing for meaningfulness, where I was looking at how could we create meaning with everyday objects, such as a bowl, right? So we have everyday objects around us all the time. And what if we could relate to the objects in our lives if they were, embedded with technology, enchanted with technology, to use David Rose's word?
How did you get your start doing interaction and hardware design?
So I did a Bachelor of Science in Interactive Art and Technology in Simon Fraser University in Canada. That's where I'm originally from. Mm-hmm. And there we kind of did everything. It was everything from like making interactive installations to film to sound, etc. But I would say that my real start came when I came to Sweden to study interaction design in Malmo. Malmo's that way. That's why I'm pointing that way. And one of my classmates is part of an arts collective called Illutron. And Illutron is a collaborative interactive arts studio. And back in 2007, they had just purchased this huge old ferry. And I joined them in the first couple of weeks, and we worked on converting that into a makerspace and a hackerspace. And it had, 1-ton industrial robots, and it was on water. So we were always playing with water and lights and sound. And we created interactive installations for many, many people over the years.
Nice. And do you prototype mostly in 3D printing?
For me, most of my prototyping is done on a hardware basis. So most of it actually looks, I'm just going to unplug this, like this, like something that's quickly laser cut. Nice. We've got an Arduino board on there. I think we glue gunned it. You can see some straps attached. So it's, really what I speak about a lot in my work is this method of write, rapid, rough from ideal, right? I very much come at things from a user-centric design perspective, making sure that it's the right question that we're answering and the right problem that we're looking at. And then quickly throwing something together and trying it out right away, trying it out many, many times until we get the right thing done.
Now, other than the bowl project that you just shared, what are some of your other favorite projects that you've worked on, either personally or through your work with Kinsugi?
Yeah, so I mean, I think like there's a lot of different projects. At Illutron, for example, we've done large scale interactive art installations. There was one at a big music festival here in Denmark called Roskilde Festival. And that's a big it's a big music festival. And then there's, 100,000 people coming through there. And we made this big installation, which was kind of like an Eiffel Tower. And then these big boxes, plastic boxes that are used for water storage. And what we did was we put contact microphones inside of them. And then people would drum on them. And the more that they drummed, and if they drummed in unison and stuff like that, then they would build up energy and the tower would light up and eventually explode in a ball of fire.
Oh,
so that was one of my favorite projects from that time. Yeah.
Did it get to that point where it?
Oh yeah, all the time. People were crazy. Oh, wow. I mean, they just went it was very beautiful because, people are presenting themselves a certain way when you go to a music festival. But when you start drumming and you start like aiming for a goal, you suddenly become very primal, right? So people, just let loose and went crazy and had a lot of fun.
Awesome. Now, when we were chatting a bit before the interview, you mentioned this idea of the philosophy of imperfection, and the Bowl project was certainly related to that. Can you introduce the audience more to that idea and talk about what that means to you?
Absolutely. So I will just say to start with, I'm not an expert in kintsugi. There are people who train for many years in Japan as a traditional craft, but I did have the opportunity and the privilege of working with a kintsugi artist in Tokyo. And so I learned a lot about it from that. And basically, you can think of it as the art of imperfection. There's another philosophy called wabi-sabi, which translates to the art of embracing imperfection. And so kintsugi is really about taking these broken pieces and putting them back together, right? And putting them together in a way that's with, precious materials, with care, with love, with thoughtfulness. And it's really about highlighting those cracks, right? Like illuminating them almost with gold to say, like, this is where this thing was broken. Let's celebrate that. Let's respect that. So for me, that philosophy of really celebrating the problems, celebrating the cracks, celebrating, these things and really digging into them to find out how we can repair them in a good way where, we're not trying to make something brand new. We're not trying to make something super polished. We're trying to make something that is showing its history, celebrating its history, and taking that forwards into the future.
What are some of the things that excite you most about the future of hardware design?
I think for me, it's this. It's a really good question. I'm really excited personally. I'm going to give you an example from this morning. I've been working with some jewelry design students from the jewelry design school here, and they just designed, and I've worked with them before, they just designed a piece of jewelry with electronics in it. And it's just amazing to think about, okay, this, we're moving from wearables, which is like, a rubber strap and a screen on our wrist to things that are more a part of what we're used to, more a part of ourselves, right? That can express our identity and our personality, and that are sort of more, I hate the word normal, but more normal, more everyday, right? That's what I like about the Bowl project. It's things like, for instance, I have the Aura ring, right? And it's a ring. There's no screen, there's no blinking, there's no flashing, right? It's a bit of a big ring, but I have big hands, so that works. But there's something really beautiful about hardware being integrated into our everyday objects in a seamless way, and doing that in a very thoughtful way so that it serves us and helps us grow as people, rather than just being, something that tells me if my coffee is hot or cold.
So you mentioned you went to school and grew up in Vancouver in British Columbia, and then made your way over to Denmark and Sweden. How has that experience changed you as a designer?
That's a great question. I think I've traveled a lot growing up. My mom was from Germany, my dad is from Scotland, so we've been back and forth. And so I knew there was different cultures and stuff like that. And when I think when I moved here, one of the most surprising things was how much culture shock I actually got being in Sweden and Denmark. Because you'd think that somewhere like Japan or Brazil, some of the other places I've traveled to, would give me more culture shock. But here it's because everyone speaks English absolutely fluently, right? the culture seems very familiar to Canada. You know, it's a welfare state, like medical and education are like taken care of in some way, right? And I think for me, the interesting part was the nuances, right? So for instance, Danes are very humble, right? Nobody's going to brag about what they've done or what they've created or anything else. And in Canada, and I think I can safely say in the States, you know, that's how we're brought up. It's like, hi, I'm Vanessa. I'm a CEO of my own company, ba-ba-dee-ba-ba-dee-ba, right? And here, you never do that, right? Like, that's just not what you do. So as a designer, I've really had to pull out all those like interaction design skills of being aware of what's happening around me, how people are reacting, how they speak, how they present themselves, and just being really tuned into those nuances so that I'm able to design for the society that I'm living in and be aware when I'm designing something that's going to go globally, that those societies are different as well.
Excellent. Well, Vanessa, thank you for joining us on Ok Xoomer today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been interesting.
All right. Well, thanks for watching, everybody. We'll be back in another couple days with another episode of Ok Xoomer. Please stay safe and stay healthy.